Jasmine. 100%. Oh yeah, we got a piece.
Wait, so
no, that goes like over there. Yeah.
So if I'm more white. I meant that in the leaf. What'd you do?
It's manifest. Yeah.
I didn't know.
Because I typed it in all caps, so it didn't do the red underline. It doesn't recognize all caps. Yeah, I'm trying to play with the size of it as well. But see, we're talking about the puzzle of the United States today.
Okay, I like it. Okay, enough. Puzzle of the United States.
What is the puzzle of the United States? Let's not go there.
It does.
It needs to be a higher quality.
It's really zoomed in.
No, it's really high. Pretty good for free and just found.
Hey,
I guess.
some of them doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
This is gonna be a bug here. Where's the dang corner at? There it is. No, that's.
Let's play some music.
I got some. Hang on, I got you. What do we want to listen to?
I don't care. Mr. Polar.
Let's go.
Mr. Polar is in world history still.
Hey, what that man do?
Question mark. Hi.
Bye.
No, that's just you.
That's just me.
Mrs. Watson.
Yeah.
Lee.
Scat. You give a crap. I gotta watch my words in this class. Especially in that back corner over here. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know that way.
Yeah, all I got is trash.
Yeah, can we watch Snatch?
The wrestling match.
If she'll send me the link, we can do that.
Keep putting the puzzle together.
Jensen,
Oh, sorry.
Y'all know what's going on. Y'all are the leaders here. Sorry.
Oh my god.
Jensen's Canadian. Jensen's so Canadian.
Yeah, hello.
It doesn't smell that bad, does it?
No, it doesn't. It smells like, what is it?
Blow up.
Like pumpkin, is it?
Yeah.
Mr. Swanson. She said she
I'll have to log into my account.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, guys.
Guys, stop.
Yeah, put the puzzle together. My God, put the puzzle together. Class
There's
challenge.
also a bag in your room.
Oh,
She needs to-
oh gosh. I'm about to stop.
There's my mouse.
Oh no. No. It's a touch.
No, go back. It was the next one.
Oh,
Let's go too.
No. There you go.
She was hesitant on her plate.
Yeah.
I don't think you played it.
That's your fish.
Ow,
Come on in, come on in.
I don't know what's wrong. Hey, it's jumping in those.
Yeah, I like it. Should
Hey,
be in a minute.
I got two.
You're not even to the street.
Okay.
You're like to the street.
I get my regular
Wait, that's not to the street.
They might think it's- I go click on the box that says find your event. Scroll up. See all the top.
You are letting go for a little bit.
We're gonna watch it today.
Hi, camera.
The whole class?
What's up, shawty?
She just gonna get something. Is it you? I'm trying to answer you. I don't like that. I think it's watch it. What are you listening to?
I'm looking at stories.
What's your playlist look like? It smells
I
like
want to my Instagram.
Who stepped on it?
Oh, let me see your hand. I feel.
I know that's yours.
Like,
Oh, and that girl you were wearing come on in. Come on in. She locked me in and kicked herself off.
Oh my God, Jimmy is in there.
Oh my gosh.
He turned it off. I'm gonna shake my voice. That was the point.
The smell in here is hurting my head. Who's walking here and spray paint? Let me see.
Thank you. Thank you. Go get it.
Landon, it doesn't smell. It smells like a headache. It makes me want to vomit. You see my eyes?
Come on in. We'll do the best we can to watch this. Apparently Addison goes next. That is a big old pass. I know we got a whole lot of people in here. Thank you. Nice. If you're bored, my class, you can work on the notes you're about to turn in, or you can start memorizing presidents. There's always options. There's always options.
This is yours. Oh, we're gonna get to play today? It smells
We're done. Let's go. Hey, get the camera in the right, man.
a lot of sweaty
Yeah, sometimes there's a reset. Slow clap, slow clap, slow clap. It's loose. Okay.
Yeah, you got three puzzles.
I've never watched
Yeah, I didn't know too. I'm undereducated in the rules of wrestling, so I didn't know what was going on there as well. Always good to support a Raider, right? Okay, first things first. What we're going to do is turn in your notes that are due, which includes War of 1812 and Andrew Jackson. That's a turn in. War of 1812 is a turn in. Andrew Jackson will need to be stapled, so I know that you're going to have to share the stapler. And then number 3, yep, I can show you. And then number 3, you're going to hold on to this for just a half second because we're going to get to Manifest Destiny today. So hold on to this guy. We got one little block we're going to get to today.
It's 4 pages, right?
No, this is stapled. There's 2 Jacksons, 2 Jacksons. War of 1812 is its own page. It's got blue at the top. Jackson's, that requires a staple. War of 1812 is by itself.
What's behind that?
This is the second Jackson page. 2 pages of Jackson. And then the one that has James Monroe on it, the blue and the gray blocks is, that is going to be at the end of this class based off of the conversation we had today. Yeah. No. Staple Jackson only. War of 1812 by itself. I got the 2 chairs up here as turning points. There we go. Dave just started.
Let me hold it. Everything I just. Yeah, I'll give it.
No, oh yeah, you think you're my current.
You War of 1812 off.
Wait, current is it only 3 pages?
Trying to do maximum.
Wait, what about this?
No, I make it maximum complicated. I do that on purpose.
The other page of Jackson.
This?
Yes.
Alright.
You want me to turn you in?
Hey,
Turn this right here. Take that. Oh!
Shake on stapler, appreciate it.
Okay, there, yellow.
Okay, so it's wait, what is that? And then text me.
3 notes.
This is what I was going for. I said, that is bullshit. I don't want to do that. She'll appreciate it. I said, that's flowers. I'll kill you though.
Come on now, got another minute. You can do this.
He's not there. They get it. So illegal. They're so illegal. And he was in the mud.
Stay put like a human, not a savage. You know, like throw your papers up and try to catch it. So they can rest.
What?
The group chat about the call. Yeah, I didn't either. Who was it?
Jeremy.
That's Jeremy?
Yeah, the Hawks was Jeremy.
He's a simple guy.
I like
Alright, one down here.
I did just see it. I would tell you
Yeah.
which one looks the best.
But he's the only one that takes someone in the group chat, so everybody just sort of laughing.
I like it.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't like it. I like this one. I like the black one. The North. That's cute. I need to see what were you talking about? What's the whole?
Yes.
The black shirt. I like that one.
Diamonds.
Yeah.
I mean that. I like that.
That's not black. It's green.
All right.
Yeah, but
So today, I would like to start. I know it's Friday. I know where our heads are at. Haley's birthday party. I know it's gonna be a rager.
Why would you
This
say that?
is it's gonna be the place to be. This is what I heard. Be there or hear about it. Be there or hear about
Who
it.
even
So
said that?
happy birthday. It's gonna be congratulations. It's gonna be a good thing. Today, I would like to start off by seeing if this class can put together this puzzle.
Yes, I
So a couple of you who were in here before the class even started, because you came from Mr. Burkett's class, y'all started. So Landon and Jency kind of got this puzzle started for you. So can I get two We're gonna rotate out. Can I get two volunteers to start? Who thinks they can put together a piece of the puzzle? Haley and Christian, come on out.
Oh yeah.
Put together a piece of this puzzle.
They're not.
I'll give you a minute or so to put together as much as you can.
He did.
Yeah, there goes touch screen.
Maybe not. You got it. Something I don't know about.
How do you turn? Using it today. All right, Sanan, I saw your hand up next, so Sanan and Harrison, y'all be next. You can cycle through everyone best we can.
Oh, they're doing a
I think you can only touch it one at a time.
They are doing a
Put too many touch points on the screen.
Yeah.
Going to the chocolate factory. This came from my brother's Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Oh, that's what I love about going on shopping. Would they be in there? It's candy, so.
That one, yes. That one.
Oh, you?
Yeah.
They don't, he likes Doritos.
You got a shorter pencil, so it should work in your favor.
Yeah, sure is.
Landon, what was your strategy? What are you supposed to start with?
No.
Corners. Hey, help them out. Turn and look. Help them out.
Flip it upside down.
Outside pieces first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Outside.
But you can't when they're all red.
You're in
I'm gonna crack my own.
Oh yeah, Christian, you got that. It's easy.
The base is built pretty well. It's a good starting point.
Because they got that easy part.
Maybe you need to look at the logo. Maybe you need to reference the
I
logo.
can't. No.
Okay, you
I
got
don't
it.
know how I put that
Oh
All right, you got
yeah.
your pieces. Sanan Harrison, come on up. Sanan Harrison, come on up.
Don't break the pieces.
Next will be Chandler and one of the twins. You guys decide.
Chandler or
out. The fact that we just got this going and my head is in the camera right now.
Y'all do paper, scissors, rock all the time. You can
What?
do this.
I
That's Annexed.
don't. Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
And I always win.
Scissors, paper,
Except
rock.
when she playing me. If I throw scissors first. If I
Oh,
throw
they're
scissors first, you
fine.
won't
On
win.
that one. On
I
that
said, what is
Other one.
wrong with you?
one. The left one.
I got about another
Yeah,
five
just
of these.
look
If
at
it don't
it
break, I'm not
Why
doing
would
it.
that break?
Make it full screen. If two of you are touching it at the same time.
My fault. Like this hard. I want to try.
Oh my god.
Oh, you cracked it. You said yeah, it's broken.
I want to try.
I got it. All right, got
All right,
it.
snap
Finish
together.
it. Finish him.
All right, which twin did we decide on? Tail. Hayden. Sounds like Rashid. Sounds like Chandler and Rashid. Come on up, Chandler and Rashid.
We broke it.
Try to get one piece each, or 2 pieces between the 2 of you. After that will be Christy and Gage.
Maybe you're bold.
Hey, watch the puzzle, you might be next.
Are you selling drugs in that hoodie? You have drugs on top of your head?
Hey, yeah,
Because you sell drugs. Yeah, you have drugs on top of your head. You're wearing a hat.
Have I been in a position to Yes, I have. So I just put you in those. That'd be embarrassing.
You got both.
All right, who I say? Gage and Christy, come on up. After that, it's gonna be Blake and Savannah.
took the easy route
Just pick 2 at a time.
engage. Bro, they finna solve the whole puzzle.
Let's go, Christy.
It's getting hard. I ain't gonna lie.
Some of those things.
You're calling my name.
Caught you red-handed.
Teamwork makes the dream work. You know what they say?
No, that's all it is.
About half of y'all are a team of some sort. I know your coach is
No, I don't. My coach says it's
I'm an independent single.
yeah, we're actually independent.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Nobles, they have.
Imagine.
Hey, Chrissy, that was not really
Hey, help her out. Chandler's doing a great job helping a teammate along. All of y'all can have observations.
Drive the piece to the phone. You got it.
That's on the 4 corners.
Yeah.
Don't yell at her.
Yelling at her, she'll let it
What did you say?
Think about that white and black piping that makes up the big city.
I gotta watch it. I love it. You ate them last time.
I'll be there.
Right for the camera.
Oh, y'all can never do that.
You can't even see my knuckle.
Hey, what if you just drag them both around and they connect themselves? Do you like Oreos? That is the dumbest thing. Why did you not
He
put
gave us a
that?
little bit of a help
Hey,
here.
Chrissy, move that in to the corner of the seat. The bottom left.
I paid
Yeah, like that. Oh,
I was dodging the tag. And I tripped Slade.
All right, Savannah and Blake, come on up. Savannah and
I want
Blake.
to go again. Hey, yes, Savannah, you get them corners. She's a genius.
The hard part has been navigated. These next couple sets of partners, I hope we can land the plane here. Let's see here. We'll go with Mia and Chelsea next.
Oh my gosh.
Way to go. Yeah, you get it, Savannah, you know. Hey. Why is missing practice? And y'all went to morning practice, so you don't. No, like, when they get an opinion of, I said, we're not allowed. Miss practice and come in the morning.
All right, Mia and Chelsea, come on up.
Like, if you play doubles, you have to make sure that your teammate is gonna go to in the Caroline, there'd be no point in practice. I love her. I like Caroline. She went to
All your others.
even when you're on a team.
No, it was not up there. I don't think.
No, it wasn't.
No, guess
It
what?
smells like.
When I hit that
It
photo.
smells like feet.
Hey, thumbs up. Let's get a little too bold. Let's go to prison. Hashtag don't care.
Hashtag, what is this?
Hashtag he spelled something wrong.
Vocab?
No, he spelled something wrong.
Don't do that.
Hashtag you didn't pass me, so I ain't doing it.
Hashtag, I'm hungry again.
Oh my God, it's like in the hashtag. That's so true.
Hashtag, let him shut up.
Hashtag David is butthurt. Just a big old.
There's not a better word, because like sassy sounds.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Go ahead and take a seat. Took a little longer than I thought. Hear me now. Right here. Back to me now. Starting off with the little funsies. Today we're going to talk about the puzzle pieces of the United States. We're going to talk. We'll try to finish this at the end of class. We're going to talk about the puzzle pieces that come together to make the United States, and this whole process is called Manifest Destiny. Yeah. So now on the notes here, there's one big fat misspelling, and if you don't say anything about it, I'll give you a piece of candy. Just kidding. If you can't even find it, then that's its own problem. Hey, I type out one word, you might not have even noticed it otherwise.
Manifest.
Here is, so what do you know about Manifest?
See the shining sea.
Ah, that's right. God bless America.
And that I
We shall
love.
spread from sea to
I'm
shining
not in a
sea.
museum.
Who gave us the right to spread from sea to shining sea?
We did.
God did, right? Because one nation under God, and God himself has appointed white Americans to spread from sea to shining sea. At the expense of who?
Indians.
People.
At the expense of whom?
People.
People is true. What people group?
Indians.
Native American.
People that are already on these said pieces of land. Yeah, so this is notes. This is notes. We're going to be walking through this page as notes today. And just like we started with a puzzle, and you're trying to put together the BC logo, we are going to put together the puzzle pieces of America, which you see printed on the page in front of you. And it's a very good print where it has different colors, so you can see each of the chunks of land we're going to talk about today. Now, some of this we've already talked about. Some of it is right on track for Andrew Jackson time period. Some of it's going to take one step forward, but that's fine. That's what we're doing today. We're moving our story along by talking about Manifest Destiny. Now, here's that nice, tidy definition for Manifest Destiny. Write this in the blue box, Manifest Destiny. The belief in the 1800s that the United States was destined by God himself to span across the entire continent from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. God bless America calls it from sea to shining sea. And it was our right to do so. Not our privilege, not our conquest, not our activities, not our burden, our right. Our right to spread from sea to shining sea, as if God himself has appointed us to do that. Never mind all the people that already lived there. Never mind who got there first. Never mind how much blood might have to be spilled. It is our right to spread from sea to shining sea, Atlantic to Pacific, because God bless America. This is Manifest Destiny, our destiny to do so.
Think about it. Because of this, will one day the U.S. try to expand from north to south?
Yeah, that's a great point. Why did we stop where we stopped? We are going to talk about some of those attitudes in the next hour or so. But yeah, it's a great point. Why stop there? If we want the next piece of land, then why stop there? So we will talk about that. We'll try to make it relevant to today like we always do. Now this simple definition should round out your blue-gray page. At this point, you won't need to side reference that or anything like that. What I'm going to walk you through today is the 7 pieces of land acquired that make up what you know to be the continental United States, the lower 48. Talk a little bit about territories like Alaska and Hawaii later, but this is the lower 48, Atlantic and Pacific, continental United States that you guys know today. 7 distinctly different pieces of land that make up what you know to be the United States today. We're going to talk about each of them briefly. So this is definitely in the vein of those open-ended notes. There's just a space for each one. I'm going to have them numbered cleanly throughout the presentation here. You'll know which chunk of land we're talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the space there is just for you to write within. Write every word on the slide. Possible. Summarizing your own words. Good idea. Bolded or colored words that jump out at you. Probably kind of important parts of the summary that I want you to get after. So no further ado, we're going to talk about Manifest Destiny. Now, this is a painting that is supposed to symbolize all the different groups that are headed out west. And without context, it might be hard to pick out some of these groups. So I've done you the favor. I'm going to put an arrow on each of these different represented groups. Much like Washington crossing the Delaware, the portrait itself is not supposed to be perfectly accurate. It is a representation of all the groups that head out west. And then the angel you see in the middle, she is America extending west. She's angelic because God has given us this mission to do so. And like I said, there's a whole lot of details in the portrait that you can see there. So this first wagon family, family headed west, that might be the Mormons heading out to Salt Lake City, Utah. They're traveling for religious reasons. This crowd right here, these men with pickaxes and they're in their work clothes, 49ers. Sounds like the football team, right? Where are they headed?
San Francisco.
California, maybe specifically San Francisco. Why is the football team so called the 49ers?
Because that's where they were.
So these men headed to San Francisco, but why?
Gold.
Gold, yeah. And when?
1840.
Whatever the gold rush was.
49?
1849, yeah. It's the
the
gold rush of 1849. I mean, I thought it was kind of a well-done statement. I thought someone was going to get it. And okay, thank you. Yeah, 1849. People rushed to California because they heard there was gold out there. So this is a group that is represented, headed west for gold. Farmers, just trying to expand further west. We hear there's more land out there, getting a little crowded in our current confines, so we want to head out west and farm the new land. Native Americans, why were they pushing to the west?
Because they were forced to be.
Because we were pushing them further away. Yeah, maybe not by choice, but they were continually pushed westward to try to get away from the white man, try to be one step ahead of the white man, and then of course the white man kept encroaching. White man kept encroaching and kept pushing them even farther. Exodusters, they're kind of that's a funny word, I know, and that's a less common word. They're a group of people that was just looking for new business, same as farmers or the 49ers, but they are moving more for business purposes. Exodus means to depart, so that's kind of the word we give them, exodusters. As people travel west, well, guess what? The post office had to keep up. The grocery stores had to keep up. The blacksmiths and all the businesses that make up a town had to keep up. So people followed. Boom towns followed.
I just noticed that the Native Americans were the shadows of the rest of the people in the light.
That's deep, Christy. I hadn't noticed that. That's a very good representation of what they were going through. Cowboys, same process. There's a variety of cattle trails that got carved during this time. Some to the west, some that traveled north and south. There's actually one that cut through my hometown in Oklahoma known as the Chisholm Trail. And it was a trail used by cowboys taking cattle to the railheads between Kansas City, Kansas, and various spots in Texas as well. So it's a north-south trail, but it is in the western land. So cowboys, maybe grandpa watches the western movies, John Wayne classics, whatever. Cowboys were headed out west as they drove their cattle. And railroads. Railroads were continually extending from the east to the west as well. Very important representation that that there's a train in this portrait. And of course, with the railroad comes rail workers. And a lot of times towns would pop up, they build the railroad in that 10-mile stretch, and then the town would crash. And they'd move to the next 10 miles. The town would pop up, they build the railroad, the town would crash. So boom and bust, boom and bust. A lot of railroad workers. And I'm saying a lot real fast. This is like the big upfront summary. Then we're going to pick apart each of these pieces of land. And then there's your answer. There's some more depth right there for each of those. I want to go back where there's no pictures on the screen. I'll point out one more thing. What does the angel herself have in her hands?
A book.
Book. Yeah, I'll go with that's the Bible. And what I was really getting after, say it again. Yeah, power line. So she's extending, and that's a piece of technology we haven't quite talked about yet. Of course, we have been talking about the slow pace of communication and how they could only go at the speed of horse and a messenger who's carrying news. But we are about to enter a period of innovation and technological advances. And just as the railroads extended the length of our country and how we can be in touch with each other, so does the power line. And that gets to, we're like I said, we're taking a step into the next couple decades. I know we just rounded out Andrew Jackson. We're in the 1830s. We're taking a step into the 40s and the 50s, and we're going to be sitting on the edge of the Civil War by the end of our class here today as well. So, well, no, when we're talking about the telegraph and the wire, we're talking about wires being stretched, and then of course telephone, and it just launches us, to just take a step 100 years later, launches us into the age of information with computers as well. All right, click back through all this, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I'll post this to Google Classroom like I always do. All right, you're going to see this map a lot today. You're going to see this map after every chunk, like all 7 of these chunks. But up front, I want to tell you all 7 pieces. So I told you the people who are heading out west and why. Some of your heritage may come from that type of person. I know we're in the south and east, so maybe we don't have a heritage of, our families planted us in the west. But you may have a background from one of those groups of people I just talked about as well. It's part of your heritage. Well, here are the 7 pieces of land that we're going to be talking about today. So first things first, this is the United States before expansion starts. You'd actually take it a half step back and be talking about only the colonies, where it's just the original 13 British colonies. And obviously that would just be the 13 colonies along the East Coast. But really number 1 here, and as we talk about number 1, this is the United States at the end of what?
The American Revolution.
Yeah, and what treaty is that?
The Proclamation of
No.
That's the Treaty of Paris.
Of?
1783.
There you go. So what ended the war? Hopefully that's a review note for you. Treaty of Paris, 1783, gives us what boundaries?
All to the west.
The Appalachian to the Mississippi.
That's right. We gained from the Appalachians, which there's not a hard line there, to the Mississippi. So this is our starting point. America after the Revolution. Piece number 2, we've already talked about. It's going to be the Louisiana Purchase. I am going to elaborate on each of these, so I'm not going to get bogged down right now. Piece number 3, we're going to find out how Florida becomes a part of the United States. 4, Texas, and that is more than just your traditional Texas boundary. Of course, today, Texas is shaped a little bit different than that. 5 is Oregon, and of course, Washington State as well, but it's known as the Oregon Territory. 6, the Mexican cessation, fancy word, and several states packaged into that. And then 7, the tiniest little sliver is called the Gadsden Purchase. This is a chunk of land we actually paid money for instead of conquering through military wars. And I'm going to tell you why we purchased the Gadsden, why we purchased this little sliver of land, and it rounds out our continental United States. So here we are. Here's our 7 pieces. Giddy up, let's go. Another, this is the map you have in front of you. I like the coloring of it. Makes it pop a little bit more for you, especially on the page. All right, number 1, the New Republic. So similar to what I just said, bit of a review. At the time of the war, the boundaries were, the colonial boundaries were the Atlantic Ocean and the Appalachian Mountains. Savannah started to say it. The proclamation line of 1763 said, "You shall not pass." I asked you, remember, this is how I review with you guys in class. I asked you, how would you feel if the president said you couldn't pass a certain line? Some of you got a little bit angry about that, right? No man can tell me where I can't go. Well, at the time, the colonists were bound by the Appalachian Mountains. However, thanks to the Treaty of Paris, 1783, we have new boundaries, and those boundaries become the Atlantic Ocean on the east and the Mississippi River all the way to the west. So original colonies, land gained. This is chunk of land number 1 on your page. Mississippi River, of course, it's not a straight line. We have all the bends and the hooks and the changes in pace. That's why we get kind of that amorphous boundary there. Just follows the Mississippi River. The British were supposed to leave this area according to the treaty, but they didn't entirely, and this does lead to consistent conflict all the way up into the War of 1812 because the British maintained some forts in this area. They lost the war. They were supposed to leave. We were too small of a country, too small of an army to really enforce it, so that means that the British did not entirely leave that area, at least not immediately. We are given this land. We are bigger than we ever have been before. And what? What do you think our national attitude is?
Yay.
Yay. You would think, right? Yay for us. We are independent and we have a lot of land. But
More.
itching for more. Right? That's going to become a theme. We're itching for more. Hey, if we can gain this land, I wonder if we can gain that next portion of land too. So we are itching for more. Right? We're settling into being a new country, but nonetheless, we already have a national attitude of itching for more. So this is chunk number 1. We have spent we've had many conversations about this patch of God's green earth, the colonies, the characteristics of each, how it's been acquired. This is patch of land number 1, United States after 1783. I see a couple pencils moving, but I'm about to move on. Here is the map. I'm going to show this map to you every single time to try to lock it into your brain. We have just talked about territorial acquisition number 1. United States in 1783. Moving on to number 2. Again, something we've spent a lot of time on. We lived it out. You walked the journals of Lewis and Clark. Louisiana Territory was sold by France. Reason was to fund Napoleon's European wars. We were only originally trying to buy what? Port of New Orleans, and we were willing to pay up to $10 million for it. However, Napoleon offers this whole chunk of land. For what price? $15 million. Amounts to what per acre?
8 cents.
About 4 cents per acre. Total chump change. Okay, that's not a tested piece of information. Unless ask Landon. Landon, what's on the test? Everything. Everything's on the test. Come on, man, smile. That was funny. About 4 cents per acre. Really good purchase, right? Obviously, it's a really good purchase. Was it due to the size of the United States? Yeah, that's the big factoid worth remembering. It doubles the size of the United States. Of note, Thomas Jefferson, president at the time, he's not really sure he has the ability to make this purchase. As a strict constitutionalist, he was really kind of confronted with his own beliefs because he thought it was in the good of the country, for the good of the country to make the purchase, but he really wasn't sure that the Constitution gave him the privilege to do so. Well, he uses his, quoting marks, treaty-making powers. Those are specifically granted in the Constitution, and call it what you want, a treaty or a purchase. He purchases the Louisiana Territory. Well, we got this big old chunk of land, and we don't quite know what we just purchased. Who do we send to go explore it?
Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark. Some of you were Lewis, some of you were Clark in our little classroom skit. And then I told you to put on the hats of Lewis and Clark as you read their journals as well. We had some learning that came from that. They were joined by others in their expeditionary group, and they were called the what? Thank you for saying core. The core of discovery, notably Sacagawea, American Indian, York, an African American. He'd be enslaved in the governed United States, but he was not necessarily enslaved in the new territory, and really an equality situation, an egalitarian relationship where he was not an enslaved man. He was worth what he could produce, and he was worth a lot because he could produce a lot of hunting, and he was strong, and he could carry, and on and on and on. We talked about how York and Sacagawea were equal members of the organization, of the team. New boundaries at this time. Still Atlantic Ocean to the east. I mean, that is our boundary. It's an ocean. And now we go all the way to the Rocky Mountains. So again, it's not a clean line. It's this amorphous line that goes all the way to Rocky Mountains, and it's a little bit of the Red River there as well. But the Rocky Mountains is a fair western boundary to think about for the Louisiana Territory. And what? We just doubled the size of our country, so how are we feeling?
We want more.
itching for more. I'm not super proud of this attitude as an American because I'm starting to realize myself, like me as a reader and as a learner, I'm thinking that manifest destiny is a pretty sour part of our history. I'm thinking that it's not our finest moment because we treated a whole lot of people wrongly throughout it. So yeah, but nonetheless, our national attitude is that we're itching for more. How will we get it? So 1 and 2, again, we spent a lot of time on these 2 pieces right here. So let's learn about something new. Number 3, Florida. Who has ever been to Florida? Any of you? Raise your hand. Ever been? I know, growing up where we live right
We've
here.
never been to
It's closer to
Florida.
go to Florida than this.
Who has ever been to? Basically, all of you.
Yeah.
I assume all of you have been to Florida. Well, Florida is a part of the United States because of what I'm about to tell you. Originally founded by the Spanish. Okay, Florida has a lot of Spanish heritage. In fact, St. Augustine, Florida, is known as America's oldest city because it was discovered by whom? What Spanish explorer? St. Augustine is the city, but who walked? Say it again, I heard it. Ponce de Leon. Jackie. And what was he? This is actually the fountain of youth. The fountain of youth. Yeah, the mythical,
Harrison, you just
magical.
heard that coming from
The
my head.
mythical, magical does not exist. Who said Who said it other than Harrison?
I don't know if you said
Yeah, okay. My point here is the Spanish had been in Florida long before the Europeans had been in the New England states, okay, the New England colonies. The Spanish settled in Florida as far back, the 1500s, 1519, I think is the year. So strong Spanish influence. St. Augustine is an awesome place to visit, and if you never taken the day to really do the history side of the city, other than the beach side of the city, I really recommend you do because it's close enough to be like a day trip, and you can still learn a lot from it. Anyhow, as it pertains to America, because Florida, this Florida territory, was not a part of the United States, a lot of enslaved Africans were escaping south to Florida. A lot of times we think about the Underground Railroad goes north. Slaves would run north for freedom. Well, at this time, slaves were actually running south, deeper into the south, but knowing that Florida was not technically a part of the United States and they could find freedom in Florida. Well, our man, AJ, Andrew Jackson, adding to his legacy here, Andrew Jackson, as a military man, this is before he's president, he is dispatched to the border of Florida to stop slaves from going south. He's supposed to stop right here, the Florida-Georgia line, if you will. Just hit me. The Florida-Georgia line. Florida-Georgia line. That's where Jackson was supposed to stop. Knowing old Hickory as we do, what do you think Jackson does?
He goes in.
Something rude.
He goes, something rude. I like that. He goes all the way into Florida. He hunts down slaves who are in Florida. He causes trouble with the Seminole Indians. He basically starts taking control of Florida. So, hey, Jackson, stop at the border. Jackson, or nah, he goes all the way into Florida. He basically starts conquering Florida.
Annexes Florida.
In a way. After taking control of a majority of Florida, the Spanish are in charge of Florida, but Jackson is basically dominating them. I'm paraphrasing here, but the Spanish basically say, okay, we'll leave. Right? They give it up without a fight. Fine, we'll get out. We'll leave. The Spanish, I don't know why they didn't dig in a little bit harder. I don't know why they didn't want to maintain Florida, but the Spanish attitude was basically,
Probably because they were surrounded
okay,
by
we're out.
Americans. If you look at Florida.
Yep, that's a great point, Christy. Kind of cut off. There's no other land route for them. Anyhow, that's how we find Jackson is kind of dominating Florida, and the Spanish attitude is simply fine. We'll get out. We'll get out. Now, there does have to be some formalities to actually get it handed over to the United States. Are you ready for me to move on or not? All right, I'll slow down. Has anybody ever been to St. Augustine?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the ghost tour.
You've been on the ghost tour. Okay. We rode the trolley. I saw the ghost tour. I will say that the Florida Army National Guard headquarters is in St. Augustine. And when we drove past that, and there's palm trees, and there was the beach side and all that, I was like, whoo, I'm in the wrong National Guard. I need to be in Florida. And I can come drill right here in St. Augustine instead of in Cumming, Georgia. Ghost tour. Yeah, Cumming is terrible, right? It's like blah, Atlanta. Anyone else? Anyone else been to St. Augustine? So there are a couple of statues. There are a couple of statues of Ponce de Leon. And you know, it's probably hard to know exactly for sure where he set foot on shore, but there is a marker where probably his ships would have landed and he actually would have set foot on the Florida shore. So that's kind of cool. It's a little bit extra about St. Augustine. All right, I'm gonna move on. If you need me to go back later, I always will.
If it's gonna take you a long time to do.
And where's this gonna be?
I'll look past
Go classroom. We're gonna get through one more. We're gonna get through Florida, but before we take our bathroom break. So the formalities of handing Florida over was called the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819. That's what we mostly know it as. But AKA the Transcontinental Treaty, AKA the Florida Purchase Treaty, AKA the Florida Treaty. Just write down the Adams-Onis Treaty. Being Adams in the name, who do you think was the negotiator for this treaty?
John
Quincy.
John Quincy.
QA, that's right, John Quincy Adams. This, you know I'm a nerd for primary sources. This is the actual treaty that was signed. They would have signed their names, John Quincy Adams. Now, Onis, this is the Spanish governor of Florida, Luis Onis. We don't know him as much, of course, but Adams, Onis. And then to make things real formal, they would have stamped their seal into some hot wax. This is the original hot wax stamp that comes from the Adams-Onis Treaty. So pretty cool that that treaty still exists. The actual paperwork still exists. And we are talking about John Quincy Adams, Secretary of State, before he was the president. Like I said, I know our storyline. I'm trying to put it all together for you. But JQA, before he's president, lands Florida via the Adams-Onis Treaty. Christian, what you got? Who discovered Britain?
Not where British, wherever they came from. England.
Where did the British come from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to kind of take that back to Greece and Rome and the Silk Road.
Oh, let's not. Let's
Stick to world history.
No, go back.
Fair play. I can hit you on the backside for that. So Spain cedes Florida to the United States, and there is now a new boundary. Basically, you know, basically Florida is given over to the United States. And this is how Florida is a part of the United States. Seeds. That's kind of a vocab word that's important on the big test. Okay, on the EOC, there's not a dictionary option on your questions. Most of the language is simple enough that this crowd should understand. Every now and then there's a vocab, and more than just like the vocab we drill, but I mean an actual word that is kind of like higher level vocabulary. Seeded is one of those words that kind of trips students up. Cede means to give away or to relinquish or to hand over, like all those synonyms. Ceding a territory means giving it away. So it is the Adams-Onis Treaty that cedes Florida to the United States. Any questions on Florida? There it is. I think we all know what Florida looks like. Hanging off the east coast of America. Let's go to the restroom. We'll come back. We shall remember the Alamo.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Oh, we about to be. Now you know why you get to go vacation in Florida as an American. Lay your hand down.
That's all we're never holding back.
What?
Hey, bathroom, go. Everyone except Gibbs a lot over there. Are you really hurt, like rehabbing hurt? I thought it was like a sport. Did you think it was a little less? It barely covers. But it works out just fine.
You're on call.
You're on clock for.
Okay, don't I kiss you on the cheek?
Yeah, you do it right now?
Yeah. Not really, actually. What you do during, notice you during lunch.
I told you to do this. Better happen.
Where's the other one?
I didn't understand the question that I gave you though.
Yeah, the one that's really
And
colorful.
what?
Really colorful.
Oh. And you said
What? She kicked that leg. I
Thank
missed
you,
my
Rasheed.
leg.
Hey, that first leg, this one, switch one you pick. Yeah, you go with the third one.
That's my birthday.
Is that a white man?
He said, I'll
And it can't hurt that white man.
Watch your back.
Napoleon. That day you looked at me. You look like I was like, I was significant.
My dog.
You see now. Come back to me. Do you see why we started off with the puzzle? We are with my presidential mask up. That whole crowd over there. You're gonna like a big.
How you playing with us?
Huh? Yeah, I saw Richard Nixon flying through there.
That way.
Yeah, stop. Please stop. Do you see why we started off with the puzzle?
No.
We are piecing together the America. All right, so we have 1, 2, and 3. Let's get to 4. I love the story of 4, Texas. I love the story of the Republic of Texas and how they fought for their own independence. Texas was actually almost its own country instead of joining the United States. I love this story. I don't have a whole lot of time to tell. So those of you more interested in the Alamo and David Crockett and William Travis, like I'm gonna give you about this much, and then I'm gonna ask you to be a curious person that researches on your own because it's a great story. But I'll do the best I can, telling you of the Battle of the Alamo and what comes of it in the Mexican-American War. So first, it starts as a revolution in Texas. I actually just mentioned Davy Crockett. He was an opponent of Andrew Jackson. He stood up for the Indians, right? Well, when Davy Crockett, that's the guy with the coonskin hat, right? The raccoon skin hat. When Davy Crockett could not really get his voice heard in Congress, when he was not getting any traction for protecting the Indians, you know what he said? He stood up in Congress. This is on the record. He stood up in Congress. He told them that he told Congress that they were a bunch of losers for not standing up for the Indians. That's paraphrasing. But then here's a direct quote. He said, "You all can go to hell, for I am going to Texas." That's when Davy Crockett left Congress. Like he literally walked out of Washington, D.C., and he went to Texas to fight on behalf of the Texas Revolution. Now, some of you are trying to write down every single word. Just it might benefit you to listen for a second and then write down what you need to. Okay. Revolution is happening in Texas. Texas belongs to what is Mexico. Okay, we know the country of Mexico, our neighbors to the south. Well, at first, the white people who are moving into Texas, they're not called Texans the way we would use that word today. They're actually called Texians. Looks kind of like Mexican. Texians. Well, the Texians, they are occupying Texas, but they are under the law of Mexico. And just like in America, they started getting taxed, just like they got taxed by the British. Well, nobody likes taxes. The Texians start to band together, and in a way, they say, hey, there's more of us than there is of them. Even though we're guests in this country, I bet we could start a revolution. I bet we could revolt inside of this territory of North Mexico, i.e. Texas, and I bet we could claim it for ourselves. So it is American dominance of a land at its finest. A bunch of white people come into the area. They say, hey, there's more of us than there is of them. I bet we can dominate this land if we wanted to. So talk about snatching land. Talk about stealing it away from the Mexicans. A lot of people will say, wait, Texas should probably belong to Mexico? Yes, right? Texas legitimately got stolen from Mexico. Well, as a very rational response, Mexico's president, picture on the screen, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, a lot of times he's known as General Santa Anna. He sends troops to this area to put down this revolt. A lot of times he's cast as the bad guy. A lot of times we see Santa Anna as the bad guy in the situation because he fought the Texans. He was actually acting like in a very rational way. There was a revolution, a revolt in his country. What do presidents do? They put down revolts. So I'd say balance his reputation with that. He's not actually a bad guy who fought the Texans. He was putting down a revolution that the Texians, were starting in the first place. So that's the starting point of what's going on in Texas. Well, so that's and then Santa Anna belongs to the Mexican side of the response. On the Texian side, we have Sam Houston. What do you think is the namesake of Sam Houston today?
Houston, Texas.
The city of Houston, Texas is named after Sam Houston. So Sam Houston is the general in charge of the Texian army. He is the George Washington of Texas, if you will. He's the commander-in-chief of the Texian army, and he declares Texas independent in the year 1836. And much like his American forerunners, his American brothers, there's a Texas Declaration of Independence. They are declaring their independence from Texas in 1836. So it's almost like Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste, right? Except instead of an American nation breaking away from Britain, it is the Republic of Texas breaking away from Mexico. See, a lot of times you just think of Texas as the biggest state in the country. Texas was almost its own country, and it had its own revolution coming off of Mexico. Really, a lot of similarities. Sam Houston, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson Declaration of Independence, Texas Declaration of Independence, breaking away from Britain, breaking away from Mexico. There's a lot of similarities.
Mr. Swanson?
That's me. Yes.
Parker, check out, please.
No, access denied. She has to stay.
She said, "Are you legal?" I thought it was. Just where
All right, so some of y'all are writing this down. Sam Houston compared to George Washington.
What are we supposed to do?
What
I thought we was supposed to be.
I'm just watching some of y'all write, right? I agree. So Anna Kate says, hang on, what am I supposed to write down? If I were me, I would listen and summarize it. Some of y'all are writing down every word, and I don't want to get in the way of that. That's fine. Okay, so that's why I try to slow down and meet every student's need here. No, it's not. Savannah said, is annexation the same as independence? Is that what you're saying? We are talking about number 4, the Texas annexation, right? But they haven't annexed yet. I haven't gotten there. Yeah, just hang on. All right, now the Alamo, this is when I nerd out on military stuff. This is the kind of thing that I'd love to tell you the whole story of the Alamo. I'd love to tell you about the men who fought inside of it, the heroic stand. Now, my world historians, we actually did touch the Alamo a little bit. Do you remember when we analyzed the letter from Lieutenant Colonel William Travis?
Yes.
Where he ended it with a very powerful statement. Do you remember what it was?
Come and take it.
Victory or death. Leads to the attitude of come and take it. Okay, that is part of the Battle of Texas independence as well. But we've already read this a little bit, and I know last year as world historians, I was using that to analyze author's intent. But maybe, just maybe, you remember that enough, and you can remember the heroic stand at the Alamo. And Lieutenant Colonel William Travis, he said, "Send us reinforcements, but we're going to stay here. Victory or death." Right? Even if they kill us all, we're going to stay here. Well, briefly, just a little bit more about the Alamo. The Texians and their ragtag army, and they're pretty small, right? They're a very small army compared to the Mexicans that they're facing. They retreat to an old Spanish mission. Mission actually means church. So when you see the Alamo, and I'll click forward here, this is the Alamo. This is the famous Alamo. The front face of it and that shape is really famous. This is the Alamo. It's actually a church. It is a Catholic church. Now, the Texans turned it into a fort. It was not designed to be a military base. It was designed to be a church. But the Texans use it as a place of protection. Well, the Texan army and the Mexican army, they face off at the Alamo. For 12 days, the very small Texian group of soldiers, 150 of them, that's it. For 12 days, they hold off thousands of Mexicans. Okay, they're way outnumbered. They have very few cannons. They have very few bullets. They got way less food and water than they need. But they hold them off for 12 days until there is that final climactic battle. The Mexicans storm the Alamo. They kill everyone inside, including Davy Crockett, because Davy Crockett went to Texas to fight. And so it's a massacre. They gave no quarter to those who surrendered. Now, there's mixed stories on how many people surrendered versus fighting to the death, but we do know that some Texians who surrendered were just executed on the spot. They weren't taken prisoner. They didn't go to a prisoner camp. They got executed on the spot. So it is seen as a massacre because of that. Haven, how many people have to die for it to be a massacre?
A lot.
More than 5 is what we decided in the Boston Massacre, right? It's seen as a massacre because every last person there was killed. The rally cry that comes from this is what? Remember the Alamo, right? And that's pretty famous in America still today. Whether you know what you're saying or not, if you want a rally cry, a lot of people say, remember the Alamo. We're going to have a couple of other remembers as we walk ourselves through the rest of U.S. history. We're going to remember the Maine. We're going to remember the Lusitania. We're going to remember Pearl Harbor. If you don't know what any of those are, that's fine. But remember the fill in the blank. That's a common rally cry. At this time, it's remember the Alamo. Haven.
Okay, how do we know that some of them surrendered if they all died?
That's a great point. How do we know that some of them surrendered if they all died? There are some, so official Mexican reports from the military show that they were just, they were killed in battle. But there are some Mexican commanders who were a little bit gripped by the gruesomeness of it. And in their personal journals, they wrote, we didn't need to kill everybody. Some of them surrendered, but they were executed on the spot. So there's very few primary source writings that say some of the soldiers surrendered, but they were still executed. That's where we don't know if Davy Crockett was one of those or not, because we can't really pinpoint if he was one of those soldiers mentioned. But Haven has a great point. We kind of have to be a detective with the primary source writings that exist. And you also have to take it from the idea that it was the Mexicans writing it. So are they writing the truth? Are they writing a lie? Are they writing something in between? That is where I could spend days and days on the Alamo. We could read some of these primary sources. I just don't have time for it. Haven, I do have a couple books if you care to read them, other than just surface value. She good? She good. Maybe it'll be a TikTok trend someday. Maybe we'll have to TikTok trend someday. Alamo, where is it located?
Texas.
Well, I told you what city.
Houston.
Nope, further south to that.
Dallas.
San Antonio. San Antonio. Yeah. So Houston gets named after Sam Houston. It is not necessarily associated with the Alamo. Dallas is its own town. This is in San Antonio, Texas. Should you ever find yourself in Texas and wanting to visit San Antonio, the Alamo would be a great thing for you to visit at that time. But there's a lot of legend tied into the Alamo. Davy Crockett, Victory or Death, the whole line in the sand. Yeah, Sweetie Alamo, remember the Alamo? That should totally be a rap song. I didn't think that one. It's hilarious. There's a lot of story. There's a lot of story that goes with the Alamo. It is all for the purpose of our class. It all fits into the story of how Texas became a part of the United States. So let's step past the Alamo. We have to go to the next big battle. This is called the Battle of San Jacinto. Okay, again, I'm not trying to make you a military history expert, but we take a step past the Alamo. We go to another battle here. What does it look like is happening in this painting?
I can't
Is
see.
this Oregon Territory?
Somebody's holding up a white flag.
Texas. So you got a guy on the ground, and what's going on with his leg? Kind of looks like Garrett.
Where'd he go?
I can't see.
Where's my seat?
Yeah.
Back here.
It doesn't look like a battle to me.
This guy right here, his leg is wrapped up.
Where's the other one?
Right, and he's hurt. You know who this is? This
Davy
is Sam
Crockett.
Houston. Sam Houston was injured in this battle. This right here is General Santa Anna. He is not injured, but he is captured. So he's being presented to the wounded Sam Houston for surrender. So sometimes, you know, we like to think of the conquering guy as big and tall and standing up. In this case, the winner of the battle, he's actually wounded. The loser of the battle, you can see his head is kind of hanging in shame because he was captured and he was presented to Sam Houston for his surrender. Now, there are some details in this picture that I'm going to point out as well. What's going on here? What do you think this relationship is?
I can't.
What are
Holy
they?
All right, there's this guy, and he's holding the shoulders of two others. Why?
Because they
Prayer. I don't know.
Get
What
out.
they do at church when they do the Lord's Prayer.
Say it again, Christy.
He's holding them.
He's gripping them, but who do you think he's holding them back from?
The guy on the ground.
The truth
Oh.
caller.
Yeah, the Mexican.
What's
So
that
many
flag?
of the Texans wanted to kill him, much like he killed their brothers. But instead, he was allowed to become a prisoner. He was kept alive. In fact, he returns to Texas and lives for, I think, 20 plus more years. He lives a full normal life instead of being killed on the battlefield. So that's what I'm pointing out here. There's a lot of emotions in this picture. These regular guys want to kill Santa Anna. Their leader has been wounded. So there's just a lot going on in this picture. Here's the take. Sam Houston leads the Texian army to victory in April of 1836. Santa Anna is captured. He signs a treaty and agrees to leave Texas. This is where our annexation comes into play. The Texians win. From 1836 to 1845, Texas is its own country. Texas is known as the Republic of Texas for 9 years. 1836, just hang with me, okay? Let me finish the story, and I think you'll know what to write a little bit better. Texas is known as a republic from 1836 to 1845. Have you ever heard the nickname the Lone Star Republic?
Yeah, the long.
That's why. So our flag started with 13 stars, 13 colonies. Texas models its flag in some fashion after the American flag, but it says there's just one of us. We're just one colony isn't the word they would use. We're just one state. We're one republic. So Texas is often called the Lone Star Republic. It was its own country for 9 years. Now, there's a lot of politics that goes into it. There's a lot of back and forth. But in the year 1845, Texas is officially annexed. There it is, Savannah. Annexed to the United States. That is how this territory goes from being its own country to joining the United States. Now, I know present day there's some New Mexico, Oklahoma, Colorado, Kansas, even a touch of Wyoming.
Colorado?
Colorado?
Colorado.
Put it on the list, David. Put it on the list. They're cherry picking words I say and trying to make it funny.
What do you want?
For your time yesterday.
Well, thank you.
I know.
You just interrupted our class.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
You just interrupted our class.
This is how Texas is annexed to the United States. Okay, there's a lot more to the story in terms of negotiating with the United States government. Sam Houston, he kind of liked being his own republic, but at the same time, he realized it would really benefit Texas to be a part of the bigger United States. So there's a lot to the story there. The summary is that Texas joins the United States in 1845. So at this point, I know that was lengthier than the first three. At this point, I would summarize everything I've said and make the point that because of
We don't know how to go back.
because of the Alamo, because of Sam Houston, and all the events that I described, Texas is annexed to the United States in 1845.
You just go back to
Yeah,
the
but
last
can you go
slide.
back?
Which one do you want me to go back to?
The back one.
Literally the
back
one
up.
before there. That one.
Right there.
I can tell who's writing every word. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. Not every word needs to be written.
Texas is annexed
I'll
when?
pause for a second. 1845.
Exactly.
Texas is annexed to the United States in 1845
Not 1845.
1845?
after Texas wins the Battle of San Jacinto.
It's here. He surprised me.
I see you.
Alright.
You're beaming.
Yeah.
Who is that?
Who is that?
Who is that?
That's my oldest.
Yeah, no fluff. I'll fluff aside. I'll
He's here
fluff
for
aside.
He just said another word wrong.
He said
He
Colorado.
said Colorado.
Colorado. I don't know.
Apparently.
This guy.
Well, hey, where I come from, people say Colorado. And
Temple.
that's just not.
Colorado.
Also.
Say
Yours is
Colorado.
more wrong than that.
He said trick truck.
We get a lull in our class.
Oh,
In our
he's
class.
stuttering.
Jackie,
He
you
said
can
trick truck.
Hey, I know.
say hi.
Don't worry me now.
Leave her alone.
No, go back.
Shut up.
I will
Say
say
hi.
All right, so that is number 4. We now have our original end of war. We doubled. We have beaches. We have ourselves. We kind of round out this little chunk, which might have been nice to buy from, in Louisiana. We're right here. We're still kind of at the Rocky Mountains. Do we stretch from sea to shining sea?
Not yet.
No, we don't. But by God, it's our right to do so. So what do we still have to do?
The expansion.
We still got some expanding left to do. If we believe that God gives us the right to go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, we have not yet met our goal. So we still got some expanding to do. Let's find out about number 5, Oregon Territory. So Oregon. This, I know some of y'all got messed up on Texas because there was a, extra part of the story. I think you might appreciate just writing down this slide a little bit better. Oregon was explored by Lewis and Clark back in 1805. They actually left the Louisiana Purchase and they did explore all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Was not land that we had a claim to just yet, but they did leave the Purchase and they went all the way into Oregon and Washington. Well, because of that, we kind of have a co-claim with Britain. There's a disputed double claim, like I saw it first, no, I saw it first. We both have claims in the Oregon country or Oregon territory. Fast forward, we skip a couple presidents and we get ourselves to James K. Polk. James?
Teachers and students, let me give an update on our very own Addison Cawthorn. He now advances to the next round of wrestling to determine his state place of 3rd or 4th as a freshman. Great accomplishment. So he will wrestle tomorrow to determine whether he places 3rd or 4th in the state as a freshman.
That's crazy.
So when y'all see him on that day, he did
Bronze medal match.
Congratulations, we're so proud of him.
Question for you. Would you rather play the gold medal game, knowing if you win, you get a gold medal, if you lose, you get a silver medal?
Oh, 3rd and 4th is so much easier.
Or would you rather so that the bronze medal, if they could interrupt once, that would be great. Just once.
I'd rather have.
Hey.
Ms. Watson,
Yes, ma'am.
8010 for checkout, please.
On her way. I think there's more energy in that bronze medal game because the loser gets nothing. Gold medal game, you lose, you still get silver.
You don't get a medal for 3rd.
You get a bronze medal.
No, you do. Maybe from wrestling.
Maybe I'm referring to the Olympics. In the Olympics, if
You don't
you're
get
in the
nothing. I mean, you get. Well, yeah.
4 things.
Not everything's competition cheer, Chandler.
I didn't say that.
Cheer's not even a sport according to you anymore, anyway.
It's not.
Not when Chiefs puffs are on the line.
Yeah.
All right, Oregon territory. We have this duo, we are disputing claims with Britain. I saw it first. No, I saw it first. It's really important to us because it has the Pacific Ocean next to it. If we want to extend sea to shining sea, we need Oregon. Well, James K. Polk, he finds himself running for president. And just like every president has a slogan of some sort, right? President Obama was hope and change. President Trump was make America great again, right? Very famously. President Biden, anyone know what his slogan was? No malarkey, right? No malarkey. Hillary Clinton, what was hers? We're all in this together. We're better together. Something like that. My point is, every president has a slogan. Some of them are catchier than others. James K. Polk, he runs on the slogan 5440 or fight. Now, looking at that 5440, what does that look like?
They're not settling for any of this.
That's what it means. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's a line of latitude. This is 5440. Look at that. Now, seeing that, actually, let me take you to this map. Ready for this? This, take Alaska off of it because that's the inset. This is about 5440. Did we get the 5440 line?
I have no clue.
No, we didn't.
Well, obviously we did it somewhere.
We got the 49th parallel. So, yeah. So, my point here is James K. Polk, he sells out. It is his slogan, 5440 or fight. Elect me president, and we will get all the territory we deserve. We will not settle for anything less than 5440. We will go to war if the British don't give us 5440. Meaning, we will not settle for any less than the boundary line of 5440. That would be a little bit of an extension, but maybe to Christy's earlier point, maybe that means we fight for 5440 all across Canada. Maybe we extend all the way up here, right? That would reshape the whole face of the United. Who knows? Who knows? But Polk's slogan is 5440 or fight. Here is actually one of his campaign mottos, right? His little posters for his campaign, 5440 or fight. This is James K. Polk. What stands out to you?
His hair.
That's the hair for me. It might be the brows. No neck beard as far as I can tell.
He has a flow.
Well, guess what? He is so adamant about his campaign slogan that he settles for the 49th parallel. Right? I think it's one of the jokes of all time. His motto is 5440 or fight. But you know what? We'll settle for 49. No fight. No fight. So did he lie? Was he a liar?
Kinda.
Yes.
Or an exaggerator at least.
Yeah.
No, liar.
He did not follow through on his campaign promise.
That is a
In
lie.
June of 1846, Britain and the United States signed a treaty establishing the 49th parallel as the boundary. And this, to this day, is the 49th parallel. Our boundary line is the 49th parallel. So, what was the step? No, it belongs to Canada now. Canada has a really weird history, and this is not Canada history class, so I'm not going into it. But I agree on several points here. One, if the United States cut up like this at just this one little weird point, that'd be kind of weird. Right, Chandler, didn't you say that? That'd be a weird little cutout. But also, if we got all the way up to 54, maybe we would keep battling to have all of this. There's water, there's mountains, there's resources. Maybe we would try to make all of this belong to America. Who knows? That's not what happened. What did happen is the 49th parallel is the boundary of Washington State, and it is our northern boundary to this day. So James K. Polk, don't have too much more to say about him, but 5440 or fight is something that is important to talk about because it shapes it shapes our country, and it's part of Manifest Destiny. We good on notes?
No, so
Hold on.
So we are at number 5.
She just said no.
Okay.
No.
We are at number 5 of 7. That means we're getting there. Talk through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are puzzle piecing America together. And once we piece it together, I think you will see, you will understand exactly how we came to be, how our land came to be.
For Swanson.
Who now?
Jack going well for
I
checkout.
guess so. Must be Friday.
You must be high.
It is.
She can't stand you.
She hasn't gone out yet.
She's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to call this.
There we have it. Oregon Territory. Now, as we call it the Oregon Territory, again, that does not mean just the state of Oregon. We have new boundaries. There's the state of Washington. There's the state of Idaho in there as well. Moving on to number 6, dealing with the Mexicans again. So we have the Mexicans lose Texas. Well, the Mexicans have this territory in, just look at that there, the yellow territory, New Mexico, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, California. This is Mexican-owned lands at this point as well. Thank you, dear. That is Mexican-owned territory at this point as well. We're about to do some highway robbery on the Mexicans one more time. So should the Mexicans be angry at how the United States acquired certain parts of its land?
Yes.
I would say yes. I mean, we're 100 years past it at this point. We're probably not going to go backwards. But I would argue that there was some robbery that happened between the United States and Mexico at the time. Oh, Christy made one of my points for me, and I totally forgot. Have we arrived at the Pacific Ocean? Yes. So what is our national attitude?
Yeah, but like.
We satisfied?
No.
See the shining sea?
You have to get that part too.
Oh, we want more. We want more.
It would
Because
only
we
make
always want
sense.
more. Because we always want more.
It would
That's
only
right.
make
That's
sense.
right. Because you know what? Let's just round it out. Why not? Let's just make it nice and tidy.
Yeah.
Christy, you're exactly right, and I forgot to make that point. We have arrived at the Pacific Ocean, which was always our stated goal. But, plot twist, we still want more. So, this leads us to the Mexican-American War. This time we actually do fight in order to gain this land. So, Texas is annexed into the United States. We've already said that. Texas is annexed in 1845. We've already said that. However, there is still some territory that is up for debate. So this is where I'm moving on from. The disputed territory is the yellow that I just showed you. And it gets to the point where it's such a debated border that the Mexican Army and the United States Army, we basically arrive at a standoff. U.S. troops are occupying certain land in South Texas. Mexican troops cross a river. And a lot of times rivers were considered boundaries. But when it's disputed, it's hard to say what the boundary is. Mexican troops cross the Rio Grande River and attack the American troops. Now, as you're writing, I'm going to explain the next step. The Mexican attitude is, you were in our land, we have the right to attack you. The U.S. attitude is, we were in our own land and we got attacked. So it's kind of like who shot first, who shot John. That's what my father-in-law always says whenever there's a debate. Who shot first? We don't know. The Mexicans claim that they had the right to fight because we were in their land. The Americans say, yo, we were just hanging out in our soil and got shot at. So naturally, to solve it, let's have a war, right, Haven? Isn't that what you should do? You should always go to war.
Yes.
Always go to war. Mexicans said, the U.S. says that Mexicans shed American blood on American soil. That's a quote. Mexico says it was on its own land. So just like you might have a border dispute on your acreage, just like you might try, like he said that first or she texted, but if you're debating over how a fight started, that's exactly what this is. There's a debate over how the fight started. Who shot first, who was on what land, and basically we have a disagreement over it. But as the Americans, if we wanted to declare that American blood was shed on American soil, we better be ready to back it up. And the way we back it up is by going to war. It's called the Mexican-American War. It's kind of like this meme. You shot first. No, you shot first. You were on our land. No, you were on our land, right? Everybody doesn't know how the war started. Well, the Mexican-American War is characterized by U.S. forces capturing what is that yellow chunk of land? Present-day states, New Mexico, California, some northwest Mexico. The war is pretty short, only lasts 20 months. Now, I know that's over a year and a half, but in the grand scheme of warfare, that's pretty short. And because of this victory, well, California has the coastline we've always wanted as well. Because of this victory, we justify it by the idea that by God, we are destined to spread from sea to shining sea. So we really don't have a whole lot of national, remorse over taking this land because, well, when God gave it to you, it was yours to begin with anyway, right? By God, we were destined to spread from sea to shining sea. Kind of an abuse of religion, probably not true expression of Christianity. I'm not sure that God wanted us to stomp on everybody quite in that way, but it was the attitude at the time to justify spreading from sea to shining sea. Mexican-American War leads to So Mexican agrees to accept the Rio Grande as a border. Mexico recognizes that Texas is a part of the United States. That solves that dispute. And there's that vocab word again, ceded. Mexico gives up this large stretch of land between Texas and the Pacific, aka this whole chunk of land is called the Mexican Cessation. Mexican Cessation. I know that in total there's 7 chunks of land, and that might, 7 that's a lot of things to memorize. But when you can kind of place them in order and place them geographically, I think it's easy to remember that New Mexico has the word Mexico in it. Arizona has a lot of Hispanic heritage. South California has a lot of Hispanic heritage. So this chunk of land comes from the Mexican Cessation. It is everything but this tiny little stretch right here that I am about to explain. So the Mexican Cessation is number 6, just a little bit of a blow up of the map. And here's our picture again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, right? Mexican Cessation. Question?
That does not spell Mexican cessation.
Mexican Cessation. You
Where
can't.
did that at?
You know what? You can put that one on the list because I did say that word wrong. It's a session, not a cessation.
It says session.
Cessation.
It says cessation on
I know. Cessation would mean to stop. All right. My secretary made a mistake. Cessation means to stop, and session, C-E-S-S-I-O-N, means to give up, to cease. Okay, so that might have been a strong mispronunciation on my part. Touche, Haven. Touche.
Oh, careful.
Rio Grande River as the north boundary. Mexico recognized the Rio Grande as the north border of Texas. This is the Rio Grande right here. So this is the present day boundary of Texas.
Nobody will.
I know we're piecing together 7 big things here. Hang with me.
Really cold.
Huh? No.
Imagine him being.
We got it one time. I put a filter. I put a filter of him.
Guadalupe Hidalgo, Guadalupe Hidalgo.
When it was all back in the day.
Hey, is this the
Treaty of Guadalupe.
Yeah, now I hope you noticed that when I put something in colors, it's a key word. When I only say it once, it's probably not that key of a word. Guadalupe Hidalgo, nice to know, not one of our mega vocabs. Okay? Nice to know, not one of our mega vocabs. But other words that I say over and over and over, you gotta lean into that because I'm saying it as one of our mega vocabs on purpose. Good questions overall. Let's finish it up. All right, number 7. That should say 7, my bad. Number 7, the Gadsden Purchase. We purchased this little sliver of Arizona and New Mexico for $10 million. We purchased the whole Louisiana territory for $15 million. Why would we purchase this little sliver for $10 million? Inflation is a fair starting point, okay? Money has gotten, money inflates over time. We're about 60 years later. This is true. But why was this little chunk so valuable to us that we would be willing to spend?
It provided land for the
As
transcontinental
a matter
railroad.
of fact, it did provide land for the transcontinental railroad. And here's, okay, you're being snarky. It's on the screen here. This little workaround was below the edge of the Rocky Mountains. So that means that a railroad could be built from sea to shining sea without crossing the Rockies. Now, we're going to full on talk the Transcontinental Railroad in another class next week. But if the railroad would have to go just like say, hey, diddle straight up the middle, going over the Rocky Mountains, that's a lot of extra railroad. But But right here, this little sliver of land right here, this is the edge of the Rocky Mountains. There's no more mountains right here. And if a railroad could hug the edge of the country right here and then go into California, it saves a lot of time, money, effort, labor, goods can travel across the country without going over the mountains. That is why we purchased this land right here. If you live in Tucson, Arizona today, you live in an area that was purchased so a railroad could be built. That is the only reason this little sliver belongs to the United States. I believe we would have been content without this little sliver otherwise, because we do have the whole coastline at this point, sea to shining sea, but we purchased it because it was south of the Rocky Mountains so that we could build a railroad. With this purchase, number 7, I should say 7, with this purchase, we complete Manifest Destiny. We now extend, I'll explain it. We extend from sea to shining sea. These are railroads we're going to talk more about next week. Yeah, some of them do go over the northern route, and they cross the Rocky Mountains. But this Southern Pacific Railroad right here cashes in on this purchase that does not cross the Rocky Mountains. So yes, some trains cross the Rocky Mountains, but this rail line right here, the reason for the purchase was to not cross the Rocky Mountains. And we are now, slightly out of order. This is a little extra, but it might put it in context for you. Obviously, this ends the war. These are the founding fathers. This was purchased by Jefferson. We know that full well, the Louisiana Purchase. This was acquired by Monroe, the Adams-Onis Treaty. This, the president at the time, is John Tyler. Haven't mentioned him, not one of our megas, but it does place it into context. Okay, Texas is acquired under John Tyler. James K. Polk, 5440 or fight. He actually gets Polk really completes Manifest Destiny because he gets Oregon and Mexico, and then Franklin Pierce purchases Gadsden right here. Some of you might have curiosity about Alaska and Hawaii. Those are, at this point, those are not touching the contiguous United States. They are, of course, up north, and then Hawaii is an island. But Andrew Johnson, and we're going to poop on Andrew Johnson a whole lot next week, right? We're going to talk about him as a bad guy. I got your attention at least, right? We're going to talk crap about Andrew Johnson next week because he's the president that gets impeached. But he did add Alaska to the country. And then McKinley, he has a short lifespan. He actually gets killed in office. Bang, bang, he gets assassinated. But he annexes Hawaii to the United States. So just a little bit of context showing you the presidents responsible for each of these. And voila, here we have it, 1 through 7. This is our United States. So mainland United States. So the question then has to be, after we reach the Pacific Ocean, now what? This is how the movie Finding is it Nemo or Dory? Finding Nemo. This is how Finding Nemo finishes, right? Once they actually find their freedom, they say, now what? And the United States, we kind of had a similar attitude. We have achieved Manifest Destiny, but now we like acquiring territories all over the world as well. All right, let's get to the big why. Why did we do this? Why did we do this? Why did we do this? What's the big first one? Big first one is that we believe God gave us the right, quoting fingers, to extend from sea to shining sea. Right? It's in the song. God bless America, land that I love, sea to shining sea. Right? I'll pull that song up later. But what has been one of our themes, what has been one of our mega themes in all the things we've talked about so far?
I want more.
Money. It's not made of money. Yeah. I got my mind on the money and the money on my mind. All them rap songs. Watch out. I'll bust them out. Big theme is money. Okay? The main driver behind the money is railroads. We wanted to extend out west. We wanted to build a railroad every step of the way. And we are going to talk about how people got kicked off their lands to do so. Today, we're just kind of puzzle piecing it together. But to, in future classes, we will talk about how the railroad got built and how the Indians had to get kicked off their land repeatedly, over and over and over. They had to make way for the white man every time the railroad came through. So money and railroads, that's a big reason. This is funny. Hey, France, I can explain. France says the land that I sold you is now worth $1.2 trillion. You only offered me $15 million. Russia says of Alaska, you offered me $7.2 million and it's now worth $37 billion. And then Mexico says, wait, you guys are getting paid? Mexico's the only country we stole land from without paying them directly. That's funny. If you know we're the Millers, that's a funny meme right there. What else I got? Oh, also, hey, let's just take the native inhabitants and put them somewhere else. Isn't that such a simple solution? And finally, I'm not sure if it's manifest destiny or if it's stealing land. That's a big thing to think about. And you may find yourselves like wondering if we're the good guys after all. I know a lot of times America is held up as this shining city on a hill. We talked about that. You might find yourself wondering if we're the good guys after all. Looking backwards at our history, there's plenty of uncomfortable things to think about. We haven't even dived into the resolution of slavery just yet. We're about to talk about a lot of uncomfortable issues. It's okay to wonder if we were wrong at certain points, because the answer is we were. But what you can make is a better America today and tomorrow. So anyway, hey, who wants to put together this puzzle?
Not
Not
Do we turn these notes in the green?
Hey, can you go back to the,
Not that one.
No.
You can click them on. Yes, so I will take your blue notes. I will take these now. This, you're gonna keep this till next week. I'm basically already pushing it forward to next week's grade. So good job, you're already ahead, but you gotta hang on to it for a week.
Can I turn class
No,
on?
you turned it up.
It make me uncomfortable.
Come put this puzzle together. No, I can't. Not in this. Okay, you can't. I bet you can't have this together in 2 minutes.
I bet you can't have it in the one.
Not in the.